Hi babes! Today I'm going to be talking about masculine principles of power. I have a few notes on this, and also tomorrow, Tuesday, is going to be TMI Tuesday in the Vibrant Coven, the new Instagram account that I've opened to actually open up more space for the Vibrant Coven. I was hosting the Vibrant Coven in this space on this account, and I just felt like it was too much on top of wanting to serve with my personal offerings, my energy readings with cards and with mediumship. So I decided to separate the two, and that doesn't mean that they don't play together. I wrote about the masculine principles of power, and with it came all of this kind of surrendering to my stories that have taught me these things. And one of them actually took place recently with my dad. So I think that story is very personal, and I'm gonna be telling it on Instagram Live tomorrow. But for now, I have a couple of notes that I might be looking over at, and I think it's going to be very helpful before I start to even talk about masculinity versus femininity, and the fact that, well, two things. One, I don't necessarily believe that we need to have even masculine and feminine anymore, because they are components of much larger universal energies that exist in everything, not just in things that we feel are masculine or feminine or that we assign gender to. And so I normally refer to them as order and chaos. Masculinity being order and femininity being chaos, because those are the actual two things that masculinity and femininity represent, that when we remove our own social constructs around how masculine people show up, or how people who have masculine qualities show up, you start to see that everybody has these qualities in different degrees, and we are all affected by these things. The second thing that I want to point out before I start is, just because I'm talking about masculine principles of power right now doesn't mean that there aren't also I'm basically getting into some of the ways that masculinity tries to show up, or divine order tries to show up, and yet seems to fail. And although I'm going to be pointing out feminine or divine chaos qualities that help us a little bit more in certain areas of our lives, doesn't mean that these principles, these things that I'm going to bring up, aren't helpful in certain circumstances that point might actually come up. But it doesn't also mean it doesn't mean also that feminine principles of existence aren't sometimes toxic too. Everything can be too much or bad when the quality or the quantity is off, and this is just one piece. This is just one piece of the puzzle. So, with that being said, let's talk about hierarchy. Because I believe hierarchy is one of those masculine principles of power where, because there is stacking going on, there's somebody above somebody else looking down on somebody else, that it creates a power dynamic that is not empowering for everybody in the structure. And I can see how hierarchy helps when you're a part of an organized group that needs to get things done, and maybe you need a point person, somebody who knows how to get us from point A to point B. However, that principle, in order to create power dynamics within an organizational structure to get from point A to point B, has been like blown way out of proportion. It's like every single organization, every company, every structure, which is what divine order is all about, every structured system that we see has people at the top and people at the bottom. And it's not just groups that are getting us from point A to point B, it's the whole nation. I mean, if we look at the national identity of America, there have always been people at the top who see what their point A and their point B look like and are trying to achieve it. And there are people outside of the group or underneath the group that end up getting crushed under the wheel of their progress. And that creates ultimately a power dynamic that doesn't empower everybody. What is empowering is a circle of leaders, which divine chaos or the feminine really amplifies this idea of there can be many of us who know what we're doing and have good ideas about how to get from point A to point B, and everybody's listened to, everybody is heard, everybody's ideas come into a center point, and then we decide together which of those ideas get to help us get from point A to point B. In a hierarchical structure, you lose some of that. There are people at the bottom, there are people who are doing grunt work so that they can move up because they deserve to be in a leadership position. They deserve to be in a place in the circle of leaders who are having these conversations. But we put so much emphasis on effort and on like what is owed, on earning your place there, that the circle of leaders that we know is ultimately way more empowering for everybody who really embodies that leadership energy, really embodies the ability to visualize and see what the big picture is. Not everybody can see that. Not if you try and you tap into it, you can. And not everybody feels that it comes naturally to them. The people that it comes naturally to, who are always zoomed out and looking at the whole thing and able to come back in and then arrange the details and zoom back out, I mean, that is a gift. That is a gift, that is an ability that some people have, that other people don't naturally tune into. And sometimes the people in hierarchical structures who aren't good at that, but have worked their way to the top, or who are friends with the people at the top, get invited into the top tier of the circle and don't actually belong there. Like, don't actually have the kind of like mental prowess for arranging all of those lines from here to there, and there. Which brings me to my next point, which is that there is a categorization based on appearance that happens within masculine principles of power. One of the principles is categorization based on appearance, and that really means that although, you know, in a quick situation when, oh my gosh, it's an emergency and we just have to, you go there, you look big and tall, this is a job that needs to be done. You go and do that thing. You are small and there are people in the rubble who need to get, and you're gonna be the best one to go and do that. Go do that. There are times when making assumptions based on people's appearance is a powerful principle because it allows us to react to situations to the best of our ability. Assumptions are sometimes helpful. And they're also disempowering for the people who are meant to be in certain spaces and really have been given that ability and, like I said, that gift for showing up in different ways that you can't just automatically assume by looking at somebody, or that you can't figure out based on looking at their resume. There are just some abilities that are there that you can't really quantify. And it was 11:11 just now. And that's really what categorization does, is, yes, divine order, aka masculinity, is all about structuring things and organizing them so that we know who fits in what box. So when we go back to that box, we can say, hey, I really need this to happen. Let me go find this person who lives in this box. It is helpful to know where people live, where their natural abilities live, but it is also harmful to assume that that's the only box that they live in, that it's the only space that they're capable of taking up, or that they are confident in taking up, or that they just have a passion for taking up. I mean, there are so many different spaces that I take up that I know people would probably, when you look at me, you would not assume that I'm an excellent dancer. I've been dancing since I was 2.5 years old, and I have not stopped. I'm a really good dancer, and if you had put me in a category or made assumptions about me, you might not have ever tapped into that ability. When people see me dancing, they're like, whoa! I didn't know that was in there. But because of my appearance, because I have the appearance of somebody who maybe doesn't have rhythm, or isn't that maybe feminine in my appearance. I'm a very feminine looking person, I would say. I have feminine features, soft features, or whatever. But also, I've had short hair for such a long time that there is this masculine quality to it that arranges for others this assumption that that's not something that I can do. But everybody's surprised. I mean, you surprise other people when you get to show up in ways that are totally outside of your category. And that is something that the divine feminine, that divine chaos, really opens up space for, is approaching things based on, or pulling people together based on identity and ability. Divine chaos is about more than the eye can see. It's about being new and different all the time, every single day, so that nobody really can get an idea for how you really are. And there's a power to that. There's a power to, nobody really gets me, and I get to show them who I am and parts of myself whenever I want, however I want. The beautiful thing about that is you have to get to know people in order to understand where they belong or where they go. And you also get to arrange people based on ability. So if I if somebody were to look at my appearance and pull me into something, they might bring me to a space where I'm doing childcare because I'm a woman and because I have a fun personality on appearance and I'm silly. So they would bring me to take care of the kids and watch over the kids while everything else is going on. And maybe in an emergency, that's what I would naturally pick for myself because that is an ability that I have. And also, without getting to know me, you might not realize that I have a very strategic mind. I have an engineering mind that is able to design around unseen corners. And what you would miss out on are if you just made assumptions and you sent me over to take care of the kids and not use that power, you would miss out on the ability to organize things better and come up with even better solutions or think outside the box. I'm like MacGyver. I will go and like find whatever is in that space. I'm like that person who can make the best of what I have at the time, and people would miss out on a lot of other people's abilities if we continued to make assumptions about them based on appearance. So, like I said, divine order has a lot of good qualities and a lot of useful qualities. In excess, when these principles of power take precedence over principles of chaos or principles of just like love, getting to know people really and truly, listening to them, it puts people in a position where they don't ever get to live out their best lives because they've been put in a box and they feel like that's the only space that they're allowed to occupy. They don't feel that they have permission to step into other places, or they don't feel invited and welcomed into other places. This is true for women, for queer folks, for trans folks, for black and brown and indigenous folks. This is true for any and everybody who has had assumptions made about them and who has stereotypes. We hear a lot of stereotypes about a lot of different kinds of people, but we don't often hear stereotypes about white men. And I'm like, what are white men's stereotypes? I don't know. I'm thinking about the Asians driving. I'm thinking about black folks and watermelon. I'm thinking about women and overreacting. But I can't think of anything for the ones who constructed these principles of power, wherein lots of assumptions were made about each other. So the people who have upheld those institutions, those principles, really have the upper hand as far as inviting other people into that space, making them feel welcome, and not making assumptions about them before they even get there, or inviting them in to make assumptions about them. The last principle of power is this competition mindset. We've been hearing a lot of competition versus collaboration, or collaboration over competition in like lady boss spaces and in female empowerment spaces. Sorry, I feel like I have hairs on me from like loving on my dog. I am one of those people who like kisses all over my dog. I can't help it. And maybe that's I know that that's a white girl stereotype or a white people thing to do, and I will totally own it because he's been my companion and he's helped me from choosing a lot of wrong people as a companion because he's been there and he's been taking up space. So I love it, and I'm gonna just continue loving the hairs that are on my face that remind me how much I love him. Anyway, we've been hearing collaboration over competition, and competition, I think, has a lot to do with this capitalist structure that we've bought into. And the beautiful thing about the competitiveness of this masculine principle of power is that it really pushes us to see what we're capable of. Sometimes seeing yourself as the one, your former self or past selves as the one you're competing against, or the one that you're competing to dominate or level up over, actually is really helpful. Actually can really help you to get where you need to go. And having other people as around you who mirror that passion, that ambition, that desire to do better can motivate you, can be an incredible motivating factor. You know, having people in your circle who push you, and I think even grouping people in school with regular classes versus honors classes versus AP classes. I thought it was weird that we were grouped in this way, and that it wasn't just like, you have whatever, you know, capacity you have. Like, why don't you, you know, put people in mixed situations so that everybody can help push each other? But in a space where it's like all high achievers, you find that there are people who will rise to the occasion, even if they're procrastinators, even if they're lazy, but they just have that ability to just get things faster. They start showing up. They start to push themselves and recognize, wow, like if I'm in this bigger group, then I have to show up a little bit bigger. If I'm in this top tier group, then I do have to show up a little bit bigger. At the same time, there is also need for integration of everybody's abilities, and the way that happens is in collaborative spaces. So, like I said, if we had the regular and the honors and the AP kids all together in more spaces, there's more opportunity to get to know other people who have other abilities. I mean, a lot of the students who were in regular classes at my high school were people in like the kind of like the tech magnet that we had, or the mechanics magnet, or the, you know, all of these other magnet programs that are more about like physical acuity as opposed to intellectual acuity. And for me, I would have loved to have seen how their minds work. I would have loved to have been pushed by what they were going through and hear about their struggles versus the struggles of people who are, you know, put into intellectual fields. I think the more that we mix things up and we create, and we sustain that level of divine chaos, the more that we get to deconstruct this organization, this categorization that we just talked about. Deconstruct that and say, we're all humans with a lot of different abilities. And when we get to be in each other's space, the force fields that we create really take on such different textures and different hues, different colors, because we're not all just like a bunch of like reds in one space and oranges in another space and greens in another space. We get to open our minds and our hearts and our own physical abilities to more than we even realized we were capable of. And that happens in a collaborative space, but it also happens in competitive spaces where we get to say, whoa, that person's better than I am at this, and I want to be like that person. Let me expose myself to competition. Let me expose myself to that sense of not there or not enoughness, so that I can learn what feeling like enough, or what the skills required for getting to that place look like. The problem is, in competition, it's sort of like a tipping scale, like when we apply it to like the national identity, which is capitalism. There's this, somebody has something that I want, and the more they have of it, the less I can have of it. And when I start to rise to their level, do they actually continue rising because they've always had more than me and they'll always have more than me? Or does it start to balance things out to where we can all have, it's like all for one and one for all. All things can be had by each individual person, as well as all for one, one for all, as well as each person has one of each of those things. It's like, imagine 100 different things, and one person takes 90 of them, and there are 100 of each. Okay, trying to make this known to other people here. I'm like skipping ahead. So imagine there are 100 different things, objects, and there are 100 of each of them. So there's 100 of one thing, 100 of another thing, 100 of another thing, and each of them there are 100 of 100 of things. Imagine one person takes 90 of those things and takes 90 of each of those things. So there's 10 left of 90 items and 100 left of 10. That's how our culture looks. That's how our structure looks. Is here, I'm going to take all the best things. You all can, distribute amongst yourselves whatever's left. And some of you can have a little bit of what I have, but you'll never have as much as I have because I have the majority. In a collaborative culture, in a non-capitalist culture, and I guess a socialist culture, everybody would get one of each of those 100 things. So it would be all for one and one for all. Everybody would get one and everybody would get one. I hope this is making sense. That's how I finally learned what all for one and one for all really means, and I use this 100 concept to really integrate that. And it's really how we dismantle this tipping scale sense of equality. When we think about equal, we think about having the same exact amount as everybody else. Whereas the feminine dynamic, the chaos dynamic, is about equity. Is about everybody has different abilities, everybody has different desires, everybody has different things that they want in the world, and if money, let's say, is that equalizer, then I totally lost my train of thought. I love you. I love myself. I forgive myself. Everybody has different qualities, like we were saying, and everybody has different needs. And there we go. If money is the great equalizer, then if we each had $100, we would all spend it differently. But wouldn't it be nice if we each had, or $1,000? Imagine if we each, like, that's the reason that my mom got way into Andrew Yang. And so did I, honestly, because his principles for equalizing made it so equitable, made it so that the point that I'm getting to, which is that collaboration gives to equity, gives to not just like here, but like everybody is doing this all the time, and that's how it's meant to be. Everybody's supposed to be down when they're down and up when they're up, and it shouldn't affect other people like this. It shouldn't be a structure where it's like there are a few people who are tippy top here and everybody else is down here. It should be like this all the time, where we're all giving to each other and we're all getting from each other with respect to equity, with respect to it's been raining and raining and raining for several weeks now. Maybe we're gonna need the power companies and the electrical companies to come out more, to come and fix things more at this point. Now it's been so freaking hot for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now we need the air conditioning people more than we needed, other people at that time. I'm trying to think of another example, but it doesn't matter. You understand that we need different things at different times, and everybody has different needs and desires throughout the scope of their lives, throughout just like one moment in time. And the masculine principles of power don't really create space for everybody to have different needs. It doesn't assume, the masculine principles of power don't make that assumption that everybody has different needs. It makes the assumption that everybody's trying to reach one goal, and if you don't reach it, then you're a loser and a failure. And if you can't get there, then you are lazy and inadequate. It's disempowering. It's disempowering as fuck, and that's why I wanted to come and express just how disempowering it is, and just how powerful it can be when we use these masculine principles of power for good, in the ways that they are meant to be used, in the ways that they serve all of us. And like I said, I'm going to be talking on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking tomorrow about my encounters with masculine entities who really need that power and really miss having that sense of power. And I'm going to get it really personal, so I hope that you all love me and are able and willing to hold space for that, as well as hold space for whatever that story and that telling, that personalization of this concept brings out for you, whatever personal stories really resonate and connect for you, so that we can connect more over the ways that we're meant to change, the ways that we're meant to embody even more chaos, the way that we're meant to embolden ourselves to say, no, I don't just live in that box. I live in a lot of other boxes. Let me show you one. Let me show you what I've got, so that we can continue to empower ourselves beyond these structures. The world that we create within ourselves and that we sustain and uphold within ourselves really has a great impact on the world at large, the greater world around us. And the more that we have these conversations and that we start to find ways to dismantle those principles, the toxic parts of those principles, the more we get to embody the light aspect and the empowering parts of those principles, as well as replace those toxic elements with something totally different, something that stands as a pillar to support the light in each, support the light in these divine ordered elements, and support the light in these divine chaos elements. Because we do need both. We need all. We need the whole space between. Everything that you cultivate within yourself is what is cultivated in the world. So I hope that this has helped you to discover those parts of yourself that you would like to release, and all of the things that you want to make space for, that when you release them, this is what I'm calling in. This is what I'm inviting in, is collaboration in the spirit of equity, in the spirit of identity, in the spirit of diversity and celebrating diversity, in the spirit of all these beautiful things that we want to see more of in our world. That's what be the change really means, is become more of the changes that you want to see, so that it ripples out, it creates a ripple effect. And you, by standing firm in your abilities and standing firm in your beliefs and the values that you have that center around these principles of power and principles of love, move other people. Really enforce the sense of that's not how we do things anymore. That's not how we no, that's not how we do things anymore. This is how I do it, and you can either be a part of the world that I'm creating, or you can continue to live in the old world. I know it's so much easier said than done, because then you actually have to put in the uncomfortable work of saying no to people and telling people that they're wrong and letting people know that they're wrong for you, because everybody has their own right. Wrong for you. But you can do it. It is possible. You will lose people along the way, and it will make your life better. It'll honestly make your life so much more worth living when you start to show up in balance and in harmony with other people and with the situations and circumstances in your life. You can do it. I love you so much. You are deserving of all the love you desire. And I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day.